Tim. Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. That's the slow beat 18,000 vibration per hour version. I'm Tim, he's Josh, she's Faylene. We've survived the week once more, and this is This Week in Watches. Tonight we've got a slate of watch news starring new watch debuts, but we mark the return of our friend Josh. Josh Thanos, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Same old hat.
That's right.
Played well the first time, so this is the sequel.
Let's keep it.
Don't confuse that with a second term. Okay, so guys, we've got our live audience joining from the UK, Longfinger, Tom P., Billy, Justin Ford, Shakawi 7, Brian, Don Gizzle, and Ben is good. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay, Josh, so tonight, interesting couple of debuts because we're leading into Basel World, but we haven't quite seen the end of the SIHH brands.
Right.
And we're seeing pre-Basel stuff now, and then we're seeing Bremont, which is neither fish nor fowl. They're not doing either one this year. They staged their own event.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first. Okay, I'm going to highlight a product that's not a watch, throws us back to one of our SIHH brands, Urwerk, but this is definitely in the realm of luxury lifestyle. It's the kind of thing a watch guy would be into. From our friends at Urwerk and the Macmillan distillery, distillery.
Only time you'll see me correct this guy.
That's all right. We have a flask that packs a punch, and I haven't been imbibing. That's just me tripping up. But the Macallan X Urwerk flask. Now, this is from the mind of Martin Fry more than Felix Baumgartner. The two powers behind Urwerk. You've got Baumgartner, who's the watchmaker and the engineer, and then you've got Martin Fry, his partner, who is the industrial designer, who's largely created the Urwerk aesthetic over the years. Since 1997, they've done several, I would say, sort of tangential projects that aren't precisely wristwatches, and this certainly ranks high. 156 parts, about $2,500 US, and 500 individual pieces to be made. Josh, what do you think of this thing? I mean, it's basically an Urwerk watch that holds two different potent potations.
Sure.
It's a flask that looks like an Urwerk watch and has two separate reservoirs.
Well, I'd say that alcohol and watches go very well together, so like, why not?
Well, the nice thing about it is at $2,000, it's probably the cheapest point of entry into Urwerk ownership.
By, what, 50 grand or so?
I would say probably by like twice that. But
Oh, I'm talking about pre-owned, but okay.
no, but this thing
wow.
is a industrial designer slash CNC engineer's dream. So
Cool.
if you have an inclination towards whiskey without an E and Urwerk, this is probably the best way to get on board. It has the classical sort of Clou de Paris look that's iconic of, for instance, the T-Rex, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of look we're going for, and it's actually a freestanding flask.
Huh.
It has little winglets that pop out, so it stands up.
So it's like a desk clock flask?
Yeah, exactly. Only it doesn't tell time. And in fact, I think time slows down the more you enjoy it.
That's interesting. And he's $2,500, right?
$2,500,
So how do I get
500
this?
pieces. Well, you contact Urwerk,
Okay,
and they
so
will make you one.
Oh, so it's by order only.
It's by order only, and we'll get to
Okay.
that in just a moment.
Cool.
But also important to note that it's got two separate sort of flasks within a flask, and a swiveling stainless steel mouthpiece that pivots between the two titanium compartments.
Huh. Seems like it's a steal at $2,500.
No, it's titanium.
Oh, very funny, Tim.
So it also features little roller barrels, so you can actually label, because you're only using Macallan here, you can actually label the type of whiskey that's in it and the age, so you never get taken, by surprise.
Wow.
And because your memory may suffer, it's there to remind you when you wake up.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, so fair
do it.
enough. Guys, thank you so much. As you know, Federico is here. I have some questions coming through. He's doing the Tuesday and Thursday shows. We're doing a couple of collaborations. Tonight, I haven't had Josh on in what feels like a month, so he's joining us tonight. Okay, so beyond the non-horological, we have the quintessential complication, the perpetual calendar.
Right.
This, the Moser and C perpetual calendar purity. From the Endeavor line, Josh, you've seen the Moser watches
Right.
before. What do you think of this one?
Well, they're like simplicity is kind of
Yeah.
the name of the game for them. It's very similar to some of the other watches that we've been looking at. So I think the Moser perpetual calendars are really, really cool. It just, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's very cool that you're able to have a perpetual calendar on a dial that could pass for essentially 3 hands and a date.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than that, and it's even more complicated than that. You can actually run the movement backwards or forwards. So
wow,
we're going to mention
that's
Ludwig
a big deal.
Oxlin. Yeah, we're going to mention Ludwig Oxlin a little bit later tonight, and he actually created the first perpetual calendar in 1996 for UN, Ulysse Nardin, the backwards and forwards perpetual Ludwig system. But with the Moser, you can do the same thing. You just don't have the chaotic dial. Now, this is a series of 50 pieces.
Sure.
I mean, what do you think of the price of this? $60,000, white gold, 42 perpetual calendar.
Seems like it's very affordable if you compare that to other perpetual calendars, especially ones that aren't that are so well designed and with the forward and backward movement. I mean, what are we comparing that to? You're spending upwards of 70, 80, $100,000 or something like that, right?
Yeah, and with Ulysse Nardin, yeah, they're small volume by like Rolex standards, but still 25,000 watches a year. With Moser, you're talking about 1,000 to 1,200, so you're much closer to say FG Journ's 900.
Sure.
And you know, we've had a couple of Patek Philippe with scalloped lugs in the past.
Right.
You definitely know the aesthetic, like, you know, something along the lines of the 5207, you know, some of the Calatrava models.
Sure.
When you take material out of the lugs, you get a profile that's difficult to express from the standard head-on 1010 watch shot.
All right.
This has that. And with the scalloped lugs, there's a sort of sensuality to the flank of the case that, to me, even though this is a $60,000 watch, it feels like more.
Yeah, it's well, their watches always feel very fine. You know, it feels like you're getting a lot of engineering thoughtfulness put into the watch and the movement. And yeah, I know that when you get those scallop lugs, like you're saying, it's going to wear a little bit more comfortable. It's going to fit on the wrist nicer, and it's going to be something that you could, even though maybe you're not going to wear a perpetual calendar every day, you certainly could.
Yeah, I like it. Honestly, the only thing this watch can't do is sporting activity. You can't dive with it. But we will have a little bit of that from our friends at Resence.
Oh, your favorite.
Now, last year, Resence debuted the Type 5, its first dive watch. 100 meters, rotating bezel, you got your constant seconds, so you made the definition of a dive watch. They can call it that. Not a deep diver, certainly nothing along the lines of this, you know, crazy deep sea we've got here. We've got an interesting series of watches on the table tonight, guys, and we'll be going through that. Plus, we're doing a wrist check in just a moment.
Oh, yeah.
So, important thing to note with this Type 5G, I'm not going to say I called it, but I kind of did. Gray is on the way. Blue dials are passé, but we're getting the Type 5G. It's last year's Type 5, 46 millimeters in titanium, but with basically a gray overall aesthetic.
Nice.
Gray dial, gray media blasted titanium case, 46. I've worn the Type 5, and it's like having a little jellyfish type thing on your wrist.
Sure.
Like even more than MB&F with their Aquapod, this
Right.
thing really feels like some sort of weird marine life limpet on your arm.
Well, it's all case too, right? Because the
Yeah.
way that their lug's set, it's going to be similar to like one of my favorites is like the Radomir style, where it's going to be all case.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the case of this watch is that you really don't have to see too much of it. It's basically all sapphire. The sapphire is oil filled, and you get a combination of your time of day and the temperature of your oil. They like to say at Resence that there's the equivalent of one shot, and no, I haven't had any yet tonight yet. There's one shot of material, like about, they want to say 37 milliliters inside the watch.
Right.
So you've got an ETA 2824 on the bottom, then you've got a magnetic coupling, and then you've got what they call the ROCS, the Resence Orbital Convex System, that ties it all together. And
It looks like matte. It's just like all one surface, right?
Yeah, it's like you're talking about a couple of discs, and not only is everything turning, but it's like planets. The planets are all spinning and they're orbiting the sun.
Yeah, it's amazing. It doesn't look like it's possible. It looks like it's almost like a digital display, the way that they make it with the oil-filled disc. It's amazing.
Yeah, and the great thing is because the oil and the crystal have the same index of refraction, you don't get that bubble look that you get with a conventional sapphire. It looks like you're staring straight through.
That's right.
Like you've heard the whole term anti-glare. Anti-glare is a coating put on sapphires. This doesn't just not have glare, it looks like there's nothing over the
Anti-crystal.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's the invisible crystal. Now, other stuff going on with this watch that I find interesting is that the price overwhelmingly is justified by what they're giving you, but grayscale has never been this colorful, and we've got a great lume shot of this watch. What's a dive watch without a lume shot? Resence feels as I do.
Sure.
And this one is a little bit of a Rolex persuasion. It's got a sort of chromolite tint to it with the blue.
Nice.
And
Oh, I'm a fan.
I almost feel like the watch is more interesting with the lights off, as cool as it is.
Oh yeah, well you know me, I'm always a fan of the lume. That's the first thing I check, and yeah, that's beautiful.
Now that watch for $33,500, would you buy or would you pass? I mean, personally.
For $33,500, I'd have to see what the value prop is on there. You know, what does that look like on the resale market, and then I would tell you. But I mean, for what you're getting out of that watch, and it's a super functional, very wearable watch. It's not something that you have to keep in the safe. I mean, it seems like it's probably comparable. It's going to be the most expensive dive watch I can think of, though.
Yeah, so expensive, but again, when you're comparing yourself to the likes of other independents that are making less than 300 watches a year.
Her work and...
I mean, yeah, you're talking about MB&F, you're talking about Urwerk, you're talking about Voutilanen, and you're talking about companies that are going to charge maybe twice that as a point of entry.
Or multiples, yeah. I mean, you're looking at, so if you're comparing it to MB&F, Voutilanen, and Vianney Halter, things like that.
MCT, I mean, companies like that.
Okay, so then now you're on the cheap end of that, by far.
So I think it's a great deal.
It's entry level, I guess, right?
And it's unmistakable. No one's ever going to confuse this for anything else.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Okay, so guys, we're going to get to your questions towards the end of the show. That's our free-for-all segment. I want to get through the news first because it was an interesting week. Now, if you like the concept of a luxury diver, but you don't have $33,000 to spend, I mentioned Bremont. Neither fish nor fowl. They didn't do SIHH. They're not doing Basel this year. They were at Basel last year, but they released a whole series of watches, of which I found the most interesting to be their Supermarine S300 collection.
Okay, nice. I haven't seen it yet.
Dive watches, not what Bremont is known for.
Definitely not. They're pilot's watches.
Yes.
That's
pilot's watches are the thing, and actually I'm doing a training video series internally here at Watch One. I've got a bunch of pilot's watches on the desk here, so feel free to ask for them and ask about them. Again, I've got just about everything from the style of the 30s and 40s to the modern, incomprehensible, multifunction, super quartz electronic calibers.
I like this one.
But I would say Bremont went pretty classical with the S300s.
Yeah.
40 millimeters in stainless steel. We're talking a very Rolex Submariner type proportion. Also, a couple of options. You've got a blue dial, you've got a black dial.
Okay.
You can have it on a steel bracelet, or you can have it on a calfskin.
Okay.
And you can also have it in a vintage style because the S301 it emulates history, not Bremont's history, because, again, early 2000s brand.
They don't really have much.
Yeah, they don't have that kind of heritage, but if you've always loved the look of a 1950s Rolex Submariner or Tudor Submariner, Bremont's got you covered with the S301.
That's on the bracelet. I'm seeing the pictures here. It looks like looks a little bit like what you got here.
Yeah,
looks like a little bit like Seamaster.
Yeah, let's do a wrist check real quick.
Okay, all right. So let's go for it. Where are we at here?
There
almost. It's there it is, and
it's Oxen Jr. Ludwig Oxlin and his son out of Lucerne. You remember the man as a star at UN. He started his career as a clock restorer for the Vatican, and so Ludwig Oxlin now designing his own watches, which come wrapped in a newspaper in a wooden box. Minimalist packaging, minimalist watch. Like the rest, it's based on an ETA 2824. Notable for their moon phase. One adjustment in 3,478 years. And if that sounds excessive, you don't get the whole luxury watch thing. You're on the wrong channel.
That's right.
So, very cool watch. Fundamentally an ETA caliber, but improved by a genius. You really can't fault the concept. That's actually one we just brought in, so contact Josh at Watch One if you're interested. Okay, guys. So basically, at this point, I want to open up the field to questions because we've got just about, oh boy, you guys were already consulting with Federico about his car choice down here. I approve. I want to participate, though. All right.
We got to get you a convertible.
So, guys, now we've got the floor open for questions, and Captain Zed is interested in buying an AP. Captain Zed, our friend from Houston, he's selling off a couple of pieces to buy an AP. Josh, what would you recommend he start with? Go dress and go sports, because you know AP well.
You know what? I'd say that you can go both with a watch that they're kind of reinvesting into and making more of their flagship, which I'd say is the Royal Oak. So the Royal Oak and the Royal Oak Chrono, they released a new dial color for the 15400. I think it's a gray dial that they released, which is really beautiful. And then what they did as well is they discontinued all the solid dial colors for the 41 millimeter chronos, and they have what they call the Pandas. So they're lighter sub-dials with darker dials. I'd say that going for any of the Royal Oaks, would be a great idea. Whether it be chrono, non-chrono, 39 millimeter, 41 millimeter, across the board. Those are the watches that we're seeing are kind of holding a little bit of value, a little bit tougher to find right now. I know I was up in Philly, and they have more than enough customers for the new 15400s and not enough watches. So that's a good sign of saying that these watches are in high demand. They're going to be holding some good value and super versatile. Unbelievably versatile.
Okay, so my perspective on AP is, at this point, you can get one of those Schaefer case minute repeating jump hours for under $50,000. I would go for that, because those aren't going to be cheap forever. Early 90s, they're around. You can get them more easily in colored gold than white metals, but again, either way, you're getting an amazing watch. I would also say, if you're interested in history, the original Tourbillon Automatique from the 1980s, they only made about 350 of them. It was the first ever wristwatch tourbillon built in the series, and they really kind of went all in. They didn't just make a tourbillon. No. They made it the smallest tourbillon ever. They made it a bumper automatic, so the first automatic tourbillon ever, and then they made the thing so thin that they actually built the movement into the case back. You can see the jewels through the back of the watch.
Beautiful.
So that watch is really small. If you're okay with wearing a golden postage stamp on your wrist and you love history, I recommend that one. In terms of the Royal Oak Offshore, would you say go classical, go 90s, go original design, or do you prefer the more modern in-house caliber variants?
I'd say the last rubber pusher variations are good. I like the Safari's beautiful. I love that navy. I really don't think that the upgrades of those with the ceramic pushers did justice to those dials. But those are both really good options. The Panda's always been super popular, which they didn't bring into the ceramic pusher style. And the right now they just updated and made the Safari an all brown dial, which is kind of interesting. But I'm liking the last two variations of that. So I mean, but with the themes, it's whatever you like, and that's why they made them that way.
In general, Josh likes the pre-2014 42 millimeters, just because they have the classic nitrile pushers and crown shoulders, and to be honest, a lot of folks didn't completely get on board with the program post 2014. You already had the in-house caliber. The main difference after 2014 is you could see it. That's important to some folks. To me, it's not important. I think if you're going AP and you're looking at an offshore, go with the original version from the 1990s. Look, the best AP watches of the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, mostly used JLC base calibers anyway, so there's no shame in an 889 powered offshore chronograph. Plus, the originals, because the 889 is thinner, you could have the iron inner case to protect the watch from magnetism. And I'm not saying you need that, but you're more likely to need that than 100 meters of water resistance.
For sure.
I can tell you, it seems like everywhere I turn today, there's a wiring loom. I've got like 6 miles of wires over there drowning Faline, and a subwoofer in every car. So the anti-magnetic thing's nice, plus the original Emmanuel Geit design, it's just a little cleaner on the dial.
I'd say so.
Smaller tapisserie, smaller registers. We've actually got one in red right now.
Oh, that's right. We brought that in. That was one of the CPOs that came in. That was really exciting.
That's a Tutti Frutti red. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Audemars Piguet Basel World 1997. Yes, they were at Basel World. They released the Tutti Frutti Royal Oak Offshores.
We have the yellow also.
Do we have the yellow?
Yeah.
Okay, that's news to me. I want that one. That's going to be on my channel.
That's really cool.
So guys,
one thing I want to add there, and because we talked about all the chronographs, I'd say that my favorite, whenever anyone asks me about a Royal Oak Offshore, I always say go for the diver. It's clean. You don't have to worry about extra servicing costs for chronographs. It's very wearable now because all the Royal Oak chronos come with the tang buckle and the hornback straps. You can use those interchangeably as well, so it really does change the idea of the watch.
And I'll say this, if you're gonna go with one of the divers, try to find the Bartarelli. That's by far the most interesting offshore of all time. But if you're my man Federico back there, who loves himself some Wempe, also go for the Wempe special editions. Those are some of the first Royal Oak Offshore divers. They're really nice pieces, limited, and again, that's an upscale retailer. There's no shame in that kind of co-branding.
Didn't they make a Wempe titanium diver? Am I misremembering that?
You might be right. They made a couple of Wempe versions. There was the Wempe edition series. There was the Scuba. there was the diver, and today I want to say it's like the reference 15710 ST. That's the diver of today.
Right, 15710, yeah.
And you could see the movement if you must. Okay, so questions coming in. Basically, the marquee, our friend is asking, this is our friend, I believe, from New Jersey, asking me best high-end pre-owned brands, GP, Roger Dubuis, others. I got to ask you one thing. What's your priority? Do you want a sports watch? Do you want a dress watch? Do you want something with an exquisite movement, a fine case? Do you want something that no one else has? And I want to clarify this Oxen Jr. tonight. This is not the moon phase. This is the variant with the date. At first glance, we weren't exactly sure whether it was 31 perforations or 29 and a half. But just to clarify, this is the version of Oxen Jr.'s distinctive grade 5 titanium case with the date display.
Yeah.
Gorgeous watch, Ludwig Oxlin, of course, you remember him from the UN, still a luminary of the Swiss watch industry, the maestro behind the MIH watch, which is probably the most discreet annual calendar chronograph you can find, and still available for about 6,000 Swiss francs. Okay, so Bobby...
So the Marquis question.
Yeah.
He was asking the best,
let's go back.
the high-end pre-owned brands. So what I'm seeing there, he's picking brands that maybe have high horological value, but maybe low resale value.
Yes.
I'd like to add like Parmigiani in there too. I know you and I are fans. Parmigiani, pre-owned, I really don't see the a watch that you can get, higher horological value, but a more affordable piece going into it on a pre-owned basis.
I would say that if you want to look for a brand that's a little bit overlooked, I would take a look at Gerald Genta. And I don't mean today's bulgarized Gerald Genta adaptations. They're nice. They're still using the same movements. They're still made in the same factory. But Gerald Genta was a brand founded by the man himself in 1969. He sold to the Hourglass, a luxury holding company that specialized in brick-and-mortar dealers out of the Far East in 1996, and the sale encompassed both the Gerald Genta and the Daniel Roth manufacturer. Now, he completely divested between 1996 and 1999 when Bulgari bought the company from Hourglass. But the Gerald Genta watches made over the years, they include everything from minute repeaters to exquisite jump hours and retrogrades. They're a high horology manufacturer that gets eclipsed by the fact that people think of other brands when they think of Gerald Genta, and the fact that they made a whole lot of like 5- and 6-figure and 7-figure Mickey Mouse watches during the 80s. Don't overlook them. The movements that they built, the modifications on base calibers by ETA, Frédéric Piguet, Gerard Perregaux deserve huge respect. And while they have to go back to the manufacturer in Le Sentier, the bottom line is that these are distinctive watches that were built with a quirky sort of sensibility, and they traded huge discounts to what they originally cost.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, I feel like like you said, every single watch is at least a retrograde too that we see that comes out of there.
The other thing I would recommend you consider is Glasuda Original. Small German brand. You think they're bigger than they are because they're part of the Swatch Group, but all told, there may be maybe 8,000 to 12,000 watches a year.
And low volume.
Now, what do you think of Geo? I mean, you see a couple of them come through. Maybe not. Maybe we don't even see as many as Longa at this point.
No, yeah, right now we definitely see less than Longa because they're not heavily traded. Guys who usually get the Glasuda Originals are guys who are going to be holding watches, not like high volume traders, because they don't really have a huge market. But I mean, the quality that you're getting for the price that you're getting is a lot of times unparalleled.
Yeah, I would say they offer a couple of things you don't commonly see. There's pretty much no other place to get yourself a German certified chronometer. The Pano Inverse and Pano Inverse XL are pretty much unlike anything else, and they spawned a legion of copycats. But realistically, there's only one since 2008. That's been Geo. The Pano Inverse with the duplex swan's neck regulator is like jaw-dropping stuff, and jaw-dropping without buying yourself a tourbillon, a minute repeater, or a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar. Also, I think it's important to note that they do have some sports watch options. You've seen the Sport Impact Evos.
Yeah. The Evo's are really cool. I mean, there's funky watches again from like a German movement house. It's like you get higher horological value in a watch that's certainly everyday wear.
Yeah, I mean the Sport Evos, especially the Impact series that had shock absorbers visible in the case. I mean, if you want to look at that as a German riposte to Richard Mille, you can, and they're far more accessible. Plus, the movements are far more serviceable. I'll also say that they do quirky weirdness, like the counter. The Panamatic counter, where you've got a movement that's a chronograph on one side and literally just a toggle up or down counter on the other.
That's right.
The Senator Diary, where you've got a 31-day alarm that can be set to a specific day and time.
Yeah, well, I think we've seen that watch here. I'm a sucker for an alarm, so I remember when that came in, I was very excited.
And not just that, but if you actually encounter an irregular length month, the system actually accounts for it. So it'll move the alarm up or down a day.
Jesus. Yeah.
And then there's the panoretrograph, which is the only countdown alarm mechanical chronograph that I know of.
Yeah.
So Josh, what do you think? Would you trade, this is a question from Bobby Lytle, would you trade a Datejust 6-digit white, gold, and steel with, okay, here's the controversial part, a diamond black dial and fluted bezel with box and papers for a Vacheron Constantin automatic?
Okay. So that's just the Overseas, just the date, right?
Overseas automatic with a date, 2009 model year with box and paper. So this is box and paper for box and paper, but we're going from some sort of two-tone diamond set Datejust to an Overseas.
Okay, so well, obviously, I mean, there's going to be a jump in quality when you're going into Vacheron from Rolex. So I personally, of course, I'd make that trade. The Vacheron's going to be much more wearable. It's going to be something that you can wear formally under a cuff or to the beach. The two-tone Datejust is going to be a little bit more flamboyant, a little rougher to wear on an everyday basis. So I certainly would make that trade for sure.
Okay, I mean, totally different watches, but the Overseas is a better timepiece in almost every respect except durability. I think if you were to bash one of them, like if this is going to be a daily driver and you know this thing's going to need laser welding and case part replacement when it goes back for a factory service, that would be my only reservation with the Overseas. Otherwise, the Generation 2 Overseas is well loved, far more exclusive and distinctive than a Datejust. I have a question coming in from Shakawi7. Tim, do you think the Rolex Datejust 2 will get the new movement caliber 3235 next Basel World? And to that, I have to say, go check out the Datejust 40. Because you really need to look into what happened last year at Basel World. Complete reimagining, redesign, and re-engineing of the Datejust 2, now known as the Datejust 40. Definitely check that one out. Okay, so more questions coming in. Are there any pre-owned watches? Justin Ford is commenting, pre-owned watches seem to offer great bargains. That's true. I've gotten huge discounts on that front. Are there any models faked so well they are extremely hard or impossible to authenticate? Josh?
I'd say that there are certain fakes that could be very close looking to some of their real counterparts, but a well-trained eye or a well-trained watchmaker like our CW21 can spot them from a mile away. We've seen some Panerais that without knowing, it could pass for real, but as soon as you look at the movement or you take some quick or a deeper look into it, you're gonna know.
I'll say this: the only watches that I've seen come in that were so indescribably accurate, and I say indescribably because if I could describe exactly what made them Hublot, I would be able to tell you for a fact that they were counterfeits. But when something like a first-generation ceramic steel Hublot Big Bang comes in, that classic 44mm watch from 2005, you can fake the case, you can fake the strap, you might even put a real strap on it because you're going to sell it for thousands more than you paid to make it in coastal China. You can fake the dial and the hands, and you can fake the Valjoux 7750 because Hublot doesn't use a high grade equivalent. I mean, they're not using a chronometer grade 7750 in there, and it isn't finished artisanally. So we've had a couple of those come in that had to go back to Hublot to be authenticated. So I would say that's the only type of watch, an early Hublot Big Bang that we've seen that had to go back to the manufacturer to have them run the serial numbers found on the watch. Otherwise, we can pretty much bust anything. If not by looking at the dial, the serial number, the case, the bracelet is a big giveaway on watches. You almost never find a Breitling, Omega, or Rolex bracelet that's accurately recreated by a counterfeit. Generally,
those are tough.
Yeah, it's the difference between a solid piece of metal and tinfoil in most cases. But yeah, I would say the toughest are going to be your Panerai with the ETA calibers. Anything with a display case back is an easy bust. And then your Hublot Big Bang early. Okay, so question coming in. This was one that I kind of liked from Kiki Fries, a longtime viewer. Moser or FP Journe, which has more horological heft? I'm going to say they're at least equal. Here's the thing though, the breadth and scope of FP Journe's collection is much, much broader than Moser. You have Sonnery watches, tourbillon watches, you have all sorts of complicated calendar options, the Vagabondage 1, 2, and 3. Moser doesn't have equivalents to these watches. So if you look at the movement of a Journe, for the most part, it's workmanlike. Yeah, it's solid gold, but it's not the same level of finish that you get from Patek, Roger Dubuis, or Vacheron. They wouldn't achieve the Geneva seal if they were submitted for a number of reasons. But what you lack in perhaps finishing, I would say finishing virtuosity, you tend to get an engineering virtuosity from Journe, and also in imagination. I would say Journe's watches are more imaginative, from the Vagabondage with jumping seconds. I mean, really?
Yeah, well, that's, you feel like every time he makes a new movement, a new model, it's like a big FU to people who said he couldn't do it, or or people who said that it couldn't be done. So I think engineering is kind of the first thought that goes into a lot of his watches, and then he works backwards from there, or at least that's the feeling that we get.
Yeah, I mean, Moser is never going to say, you know what, we need a caliber 1210 Swiss-made display caseback quartz that can sleep for 18 years with a memory. Moser's not going to do that. Moser's not going to create something. I mean, let's take the simple watch. Let's take the Chronomètre Bleu. His cheapest watch, but possibly his most in-demand timepiece.
Cheapest mechanical watch, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of, that's true. As of the 2016 Elegant 48, no longer the cheapest in the line. And I'll say this about the Elegant 48. That's not a watch that sells on price. It sells on appeal, like the Chronomètre Bleu.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen, we've had him pre-owned. They're strong. And all of his watches, for, you know, from a competitive standpoint, all hold value.
Yeah.
Because of, well, a lot of different things. But, I mean, it's, his watches all make sense, too. And I think I was talking to one collector who's actually familiar with Journe, spent some time with him, and he was talking about how you'll never have a pusher added into any of his, say, like, any of his complicated calendars, because who the hell's going to carry around a pusher, is his feeling. Well, Patek makes a lot of watches where you have to have a pusher, but he decides
but you have to have a pusher or a toothpick.
That's right. If you can't change the date or a moon phase or something like that with your finger, then it's useless in his mind. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I would say in terms of blue sky imagination, complications available, also variety. Since 1999, FP Journe has built a lot of models and a lot of variations. There's no, I mean, he's even made sports watches. He's made aluminum sports watches. He did a co-branding agreement with Jean Alesi because they were buddies. Lots of stuff that Journe would do that Moser wouldn't do. So because the Journe universe is bigger and in my mind more impressive, they get the edge over Moser, even though there are some individual Moser watches that I might take over certain Journes. So question coming in, this is from Mike Brekovic, who's asking, Tim, can you give us your opinion on the Rolex Cellini line? Okay, we've seen the Rolex Cellini line sort of rebooted since 2014. We've seen round watches, automatic watches, chronometer grade watches. I would say the Cellini line is like a best kept secret. What do you think, Josh? I'll get a little deeper, but I want your views on this.
I think it's a Rolex in name only, in my opinion. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
It's a Rhino.
Okay.
Okay, so to him, Cellini is a Rhino. To me, Cellini is the best buy in Rolex, because you're getting a Rolex and all that entails. Everything from display casebacks to manual wind movements to hinge lugs to quartz. If you're into that, you can get that with Cellini, and you can get it at a huge discount. Consider the late reference 5441 2005 to 2015 Cellini prints. Okay, it's a non-round watch in a Rolex catalog. It was the first ever display caseback Rolex, and shock of shocks, the caliber 7040 is actually cool to look at. Dials that matched the movement finish from Rolex?
All right, sold. Okay, I'll buy it.
Okay, you see, that's what I do. I turn it around like that. I think it's a special collection for the kind of person who doesn't want to go out and, for instance, drop money on something everyone's got. Everyone's got an IWC Portuguese. I love them, but JLC Masters and Reversos, they're out there. Even a lot of Vacheron timepieces, I don't want to say they have a generic look, but they're certainly not as bold as some of the Cellinis. Again, the Prince, it's a crazy watch, and it's a watch that Rolex only did because it was an authentic part of its heritage. They made those watches in the 30s, in the 20s, in the 40s. I would love to see Rolex come out with another jump hour Prince, be super bold. But the fact that they did that watch proves that Rolex first of all, has some stones,
Okay.
is willing to take risks, is willing to suffer a low volume timepiece if it's historically authentic to the brand.
Sure.
And then, again, I can't tie it to the Cellini line because it's not, but the original King Midas,
Okay.
the reference, I want to say 9630, awesome watch. The original 1,000 piece Elvis wore one Cellini
right.
with the coolest boxed set of the 1960s.
We've had one, by the way.
We had one that
Yeah.
was, I think it was too late to save the patient. It was gem set.
Yeah.
But hey, someone got
Rough.
a rare watch.
Yeah.
I like the Cellinis. Just be aware. With the Cellini line, if you buy high, you're going to sell low. And that's just market economics.
Sure.
Otherwise, the current Cellinis, I like the Cellini date, and I like a combination of a dark dial and white gold, so that's where I stand on the current Cellini
I
model.
think you're the only one on the planet who can discuss the Cellini catalog and know exactly what you're talking about. I have to say I'm very impressed, Tim.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, right. You walk into a Rolex dealer, Cellini. No, they're in New York.
Yeah.
No, the model line. Oh, those!
We got a few of those lying
Oh,
around.
yeah, hang on. It's in a box.
Let's call
I
it.
saw these once.
That's right.
Okay. Jason Kim commenting Rolex 16264 best kept secret. Yeah, I know about that one. You're talking about. I know about that one. You and I are on the same plane. I've done that as a. I think when I did the episode with Ariel Adams, that was one of my underserved Rolex picks. So yes. Okay. So this is where the questions are right now from Captain Zed. Josh, did someone buy the FP Journe Elegant 48?
Yeah. He also asked if I bought it. No, I didn't buy the watch. The watch was sold to one of our good customers, a collector, a local collector.
How about we talk about Laurent Ferrier, coming from our friend Prince of Beirut. All right, longtime viewer of the channel and a friend of the brand. I like them.
Yeah.
I would say this. If you're interested in the work they do, keep in mind that a lot of their stuff can only be serviced by them.
That's right.
When you get into the realm of manufacture tourbillon movements, direct impulse escapements, a lot of their stuff was actually designed early on in conjunction with Fabrique du Temps of Geneva that also does prototyping and complication production for Louis Vuitton. They're a great example of a company that's, I mean, Josh, have you ever heard the expression, I think I might have coined it, so you might not.
Okay.
The only vertically integrated manufacturer is Switzerland.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Laurent Ferrier is a great example of how companies from around Switzerland came together under the name of one master to create a brand. So I like them. And in particular, I like their Traveler World Time watches, their work with enamel dials in the past, their exquisite case-back tourbillons. I may be the last guy on earth who likes a case-back tourbillon.
You know what? It adds a simplicity to the watch that's not flashy, not showy, and when you're wearing it and in the room, you're the only one who knows, for the most part, especially with Laurent Ferrier. And I do have a good customer of mine who's a big collector. He's been telling me to get into it, so I've been doing some research. And actually, when I was in Philly, they took one in a rose gold. I don't know the reference. But you know what? There is something to be said about the manufacturer. And on my side of things, the market side of things, there really isn't a huge market, though they bought the watch in Philly, they paid good money for it, and they sold it for good money. So it looks like the watch actually does hold some value.
I would say a Gallet Square is in any of its iterations, is a great micro-brand alternative to something like a Patek Philippe Gondolo. So if you're cross-shopping Patek Philippe Gondolo, consider a Gallet Square. Gorgeous watches, sensuous cases. I would say some of their earlier watches were almost conservative to a fault, but in the last 2 to 3 years, they've broken out of that mold a little bit. But yeah, you name it.
Cushion cases, very comfortable watches, very non-pretentious pieces for sure.
I think so, although they got away from that a little bit at SIHH this
Yeah.
year by going with a tourbillon that's actually on the dial.
That's right.
Yeah, I understand. The guy who buys a tourbillon wants you to know.
Let's look at it.
It's why we don't have cars like my old 2003 Audi S8, which was so subtle. You had those, I know.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. I got a support group around here.
That's right.
You get 2 exhaust pipes and polished aluminum mirrors, and that's it. Today, an executive AMG, Audi S, RS, BMW M car, it's in your face. That's the equivalent of the tourbillon on the dial of a Laurent Ferrier.
That's right. Yeah. Look what I bought.
Exactly. Okay, so FP Journe Vagabondage, what do we think about the price point at 56,000 Swiss francs? Well, let's see. You've got jumping seconds in a reliable watch you can wear every day. Hell yeah. Yes, please. What do you think?
there's nothing really that I can say negatively about FP Journer at this point. I'd say the price point is amazing, but it's not like it's a watch you can walk into a boutique and buy, by the way.
Yeah.
From what I understand, you have to have owned the two, maybe the one, and if not either of those, a long list of different Journes, and they basically deem you fit to purchase the watch. I mean, it's super exclusive, and it makes so much sense for him. That, listen, if you want this watch, let me see what else you bought for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because we had a little talk about this with Brian Goffberg when we were talking about Patek Philippe and how you don't just go in and lay down for, you know, a 5216 or a 5207. There's an approval process. Your credentials,
application,
your credentials are your collection. You're standing with dealers. Do you buy new? Do you just have a bunch of watches you bought pre-owned? Do you own vintage pieces? Are they significant? Things like that. So yeah, that's the closest I think you'll come to Patek with FP Journe trying to get your hands on a Vagabondage 3.
That's right.
But if you're successful, let me know. I want you on the show.
That's right.
Okay, other question coming through from Jordan asking, what do we think about the Omega Speedy Tuesday watch, the watch and the method of selling? Well, you know, it's two things. It's a tribute to Speedy Tuesday, which Robert Jan Broer over at Fratello Watches, if you haven't read his site, great series.
Yeah.
He's legitimately a scholar of the Omega Speedmaster, and there are not too many people who can be called scholars of a specific watch or brand. He's up there with the Speedmaster. Jeff Stein would be that for Heuer chronographs. I hope someday to be that guy for JLC. But as of right now, I like the watch. You realize Project Alaska is also paid tribute in this special edition of, I believe, I want to say 1,970 watches. But Project Alaska started out as a huge titanium, like, cushion case. I use the term loosely because it's a cushion about the size of one you could sleep on.
That's right.
The original Project Alaska was a huge machine.
It's a red dial, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, it was a titanium like lozenge inside a red case.
That's right.
Project Alaska 2 is the one everyone remembers.
Yeah.
That's the like albino Speedmaster. That's the one that was re-released in 2008. You remember that watch because it had the little rocket sub-register hands. It was white. It came in the big aluminum red case. That's what Josh is talking about.
Yeah.
And you could wear it with that, and then it was like the size of his hat. But there was a Project Alaska 3. There was also a Project Alaska 5, or 4, excuse me, but we won't get into that. That was quartz. But Project Alaska 3 had radial sub-register indications, a little bit of a different dial shade. I like the fact that they chose to pay tribute to a weird and obscure vintage Omega and not one of the all-time greatest hits. I think that fits the mold of Speedy Tuesday, which is a broad investigation of everything the Speedmaster is and has ever been. In terms of selling it, the way they're selling it, I'm agnostic on it. Honestly, pre-registering to buy a special edition, I've never done it, but if you're that into the watch, if you're really into Speedy Tuesday, you're really into the Speedmaster, or you just love the Project Alaska 3, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. You know, I think that they're realizing that they have a real collectible market for a lot of their watches. The Snoopy, which I think was released in limited quantities, but unknowingly. I don't think Omega really understood how popular that watch is going to be, and they saw what happened with that. So the Speedy Tuesday is really cool, and I'm really surprised at the demand for a watch like that because, you know, in Basel, they're going to come out with some special edition Speedmasters. It's going to happen.
60th anniversary of the Speedmaster is going to be piles and piles and piles.
And people know this, especially if you're going for a Speedy Tuesday. And I have customers asking me, hey, can you get me one of these watches? And the answer is no.
Honestly, I'll tell you what, if you want a bizarre and rare Omega chronograph, I've got a very cool one right here. This isn't my wrist shot for the night. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm actually just wearing my old Omega Seamaster. Wore it for the show on Wednesday, and honestly, I just kept wearing it. We did our ETA movements with Mike Michaels on Wednesday. I just love that watch, my graduation watch. Yeah, I've punched things while wearing it. I've fallen off a bike, but this is the Omega Seamaster NZL32. It's a regatta timer, so it has that functionality from the caliber 3602. It's a unique timepiece because it ties directly into Omega's sponsorship of the America's Cup Emirates Team New Zealand. But it's so different from any other Seamaster. Really, if you want a super weird, unique Seamaster chronograph, it's pretty much that and the Apnea. And it's a cool watch, pre-coaxial, so it's tough, no nonsense in the movement, just an exotic dial, a different look, exclusivity. And, you know, that watch came out in 2007. So 10 years on, make it an anniversary gift to yourself.
There you go.
I love that watch.
It's a good watch.
So, Well, this is an interesting question from Kiesh, and he's asking, is pre-sold suffering like general Swiss watch industry? Is the pre-sold watch market, so I guess he means special editions that are subscribed in advance. Kind of hard to tell from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely tough to see, but there's always going to be people who are going to want to have the watch first.
Yeah.
So depending on the amounts that they're releasing out there, I'd say that's really not suffering too much.
Okay, so two things that are interesting to me. One is a question that's, I'm not really sure if it's a question. Oh, no, here it is. Okay. Sorry, this chat box moves along, guys. I have to jump back to find your questions. Bryant Lee is asking, Josh, given the same condition, would a watch with an authorized dealer stamp paper set fetch more in a trade versus a gray market watch?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be specific to the brand, the model.
Yeah.
I mean, all else equal, we're talking about, let's just say like a Rolex Datejust steel.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It depends on who's selling the watch also.
Yeah.
If we, as Watch You Want or Govberg Jewelers, is selling that watch, then the difference between having papers and without is probably going to be less than if you're Joe Schmo on eBay. A lot of times people aren't going to buy a watch from a private seller without papers. So that can take it completely off the market for a lot of people. So it just depends on who's selling the watch and what the watch is. If you have some Journe Tourbillon that no box, no papers, and you're Joe Schmo, no chance you sell that watch. It just doesn't happen. But if you have the full set of box and papers and provenance. In fact, actually today I had a conversation with a customer, and normally we pay a little bit less for the watch, but he was the original owner. He's had it serviced in very regular intervals, has all the paperwork and the original purchase receipt, so he persuaded me to pay him an extra $300 for that watch, and we decided that will make a difference. It'll make it a little easier for us to sell, so we'll go ahead and pay the extra money.
Yeah, it's a complicated sort of musical chairs game.
That's exactly right,
and realistically, there's so many features and functions and factors that when you've got a watch, your best case scenario is that you're trading something that's still in the warranty, has all the boxes, all the original paper, original bill of sale, so important these days if you want to be able to transfer a warranty, all accessories. Heck, it even helps sometimes if you take the stickers that were on the watch and you stick them on the back of the owner's manual or the warranty card. Some people will look for that. So you start with all of that plus a stamp from an authorized dealer, you're starting ahead of the game.
Yeah, provenance is really, really important buying pre-owned.
A comment from Detroit Shinola saying that smartwatches killed mechanical watches. Not so much. I think the key distinction here is that smartwatches are popular because they're cheap and they're functional, and they do for us what quartz watches did in 1969. Like the quartz watch came on board and it pretty much took over time telling. Like it was not a romantic piece, it was not a artisanal piece. It had no function except to tell you the time of the day, and it did that cheaply. And smartwatches have pretty much taken over the role of the watch in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really compete parallel. I mean, so I have a customer, actually the same guy who's selling the Rolex we were talking about earlier that I paid a little bit more. He's selling his watch because he said he bought an Hermes iWatch, Apple Watch, right? So for him, not really a watch guy, not really a collector. For him, that was enough luxury there. But we're talking about, when we look at these watches here on the table, these are all luxury pieces. Nobody here needs to buy any of these, and I think we all understand that, right? There's not a need here at all. It's purely a want. So it has to do with what you want to collect, make a hobby for yourself, or have as a status symbol. A lot of those things go into it, and an iWatch is really not going to do that for you.
No, I mean, here's the thing I always say. A luxury product competes with a luxury product.
That's right.
I think a luxury watch like these, they face greater competition from a guy who might buy a high-end stereo, a Ducati, or a Boston Whaler than they face from smartwatches.
It's 100% right.
Like, smartwatches are watches in name only. We had the Rolex in name only, the Rhino. We have the watch in name only now, the Wino. And I know, considering how I started the show tonight, you might suspect, well, never mind. But the bottom line is that if it's not a luxury product, it doesn't compete with a luxury watch. If it's just a wrist-borne extension of your phone, then let's face it, it's more of a threat to Samsung if it's an Apple iWatch than it is to Omega.
I mean, to even further that point, that would be like saying that, I could go buy a Honda Civic Si that's a little go-fast car for, $23,000, or I can go spend $300,000 on a Lamborghini. Well, obviously we're going to go for that Civic. Well, no, it's not the way it works. These are luxury goods, and they're going to compete with other luxury goods.
Yeah, they're emotional purchases.
That's right.
And the other thing is, big difference, you don't throw them away.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the smartwatch, the smartphone, the tablet, the iPod, it ends up in some coastal Chinese city where they separate the base materials from the copper.
That's right. Because they're going to be obsolete eventually.
Yeah.
And, I mean, these are all obsolete.
Yeah,
but that's not the point.
This was obsolete a long time ago, like before I was born.
That's right.
So,
but that's not the point.
Now, if you're fossil group, bigger problem. You sell the $200 to $600 watch.
Right.
If you're competing on that level, sure, but those aren't luxury products.
No.
Also important to note, a question from our friend Yahia, who's asking, please discuss jumping hours complications by independent masters like Vincent Calabrese and Gerald Genta.
I'll let you take this one.
Absolutely. Okay, I was talking with my friend Federico, who's literally like 10 feet behind this camera here.
There he is.
And he's answering the questions in the chat box. But Vincent Calabrese did 2 great jump hour watches that often just aren't associated with him, but should be. He did a jump hour watch for Bell & Ross, which is probably the cheapest way you can get into a true, honest-to-God AHCI Masters watchmaking.
World War II or something, right? Which one is that?
It's part of their round case line.
Yeah.
It's a lot like their BR-126, vintage-style aviators chronographs, but it's a jump hour and it's a Bell & Ross, and you can get it very cheaply. He also did a gold file special edition, which is beautiful. If you want something now that has like the billing you would expect with a master watchmaker, with the fit, the finish, the presentation, the box set, all of that, you're going to get it with the gold file, a watch I strongly endorse in spite of not really being a colored gold guy. In terms of Gerald Genta, important proponent of retrogrades. He's not really a master watchmaker. He was a jewelry and watch designer. Fortunately, he employed master watchmakers, and actually we have a friend of our watchmaking department who came to us from Gerald Genta and Daniel Roth and later Bulgari, and she's our specialist in jump hours and in retrogrades. So they're very delicate. They require serious skill to fabricate, to tune, and to service.
Yeah.
And that's why when I said at the beginning of the show, consider Gerald Genta brand watches and their Bulgari successors. You'll know them because they still have GG movement numbers on them. But consider them alongside the likes of older Roger Dubuis and Chopard LUC, another brand that deserves to be mentioned up there with the likes of Roger Dubuis and Gerald Genta. And when we talk about kind of underserved luxury brands like Parmigiani, yeah, Chopard LUC is in there, Gerald Genta is in there. And since the 80s, retrogrades were a big deal at Gerald Genta. You can remember Mickey Mouse.
Yep.
That was not an easy thing to build. It looks comical, but it's high horology in every sense.
Yeah.
Now, during the 90s, the Gerald Genta manufacturer started combining the retrograde with a jump hour, and they had a patent on that. And then in the 2000s, they started combining the retrograde date with a retrograde minutes display with a jump hour. And they actually had a number of patents issued so that you could adjust the mechanism without damaging the jump hour if you set the retrograde backwards and forwards, so you could independently jump the hour without changing the position of the minutes hand. These are watches like the Arena by Retro. Look them up because they're worth your while if you're in the market for something that's a retrograde, an independent brand, high horology, and a great value. Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, Josh has no strong opinions on jump hours, but Josh knows all the stuff that I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, we have a question coming in. We have a question coming in along the lines of...
Where are we at here?
Oh, Eric has an interesting... Okay, so a ship sits in Norfolk mothball yard long enough. Is this like 2 trains leave Chicago and Duluth, Minnesota?
It's a math question.
Yeah, I'm going to skip the math question, but that's an iWatch in 2025. His point is that when a ship sits in ordinary or reserve for a long time, basically we start thinking about how we're going to break it down and take out all the precious metals from the radars, all the sensitive equipment on board that can be scrapped and resold. And it's the same thing with the iWatch in 2025, what Eric is saying. He's saying basically they're only good for the gold and the printed circuit cards 5 years down the line. And that's the difference between a luxury product and an iWatch or an Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Integrated technology piece is all it is.
So now Federico and Josh, this one's open to you. But you mentioned before that adding a moon phase, Federico was saying adding a moon phase to Cartier new releases in the dive watch segment was a mismatch. How about a moon phase on the Patek 5726 annual calendar? Okay, so that's on the Nautilus. But Josh, can we agree that the Nautilus kind of straddles the dress and sports watch world?
That's exactly what it does. Yeah, I mean, I'd say that, when you're going for Patek, if you really want a true sports watch, you're looking at the Aquanaut line. When you get into the Nautiluses, now you're looking at something that, exactly like you said, straddles the line. You can wear it dress or you can wear it to the beach. It's just an everyday, all-time wearing watch. I know Brian has the 5980.
Yeah.
Again,
he has a beat 5980.
Oh, and you know what? It runs like the day he bought it, and the watch can be refinished back to new as well. So, when you look at a Nautilus, it kind of has to exclude itself. A Cartier moon phase and a Patek moon phase are.
Yeah, here's the thing: 5726. It's only got like 6 ATM water resistance because of all the case perforations. It's generally delivered on a strap. It's a dress watch. The Nautilus is thin and fine and upscale, and no one will question you if you wear that in formal attire. They're not going to say, 40 years ago, that was a sports watch, when in its simple version. So don't worry, it's not a fashion faux pas. I think the moon phase belongs there. It's in character with the watch. Now here's something, a question coming in from Jack Skull asking, brand new Breitling Colt Sky Racer or pre-owned automatic Breitling with no papers. Here's the thing, the Breitling Colt Sky Racer is Breitling trying to pare down a watch to the bare essence. The minimum of what can be considered a luxury product to sell it for $2,000, bright light case, which is a way of saying kind of plastic, and it's powered by a quartz movement. So would you take that brand new or a pre-owned automatic Breitling with no papers?
Well,
Let's compare apples to apples. Let's take an automatic Colt from the 90s, a watch you probably buy for $1,500, $1,200.
I'd go for the automatic.
Yeah, so would I.
Simple answer.
Honestly, I would buy the watch that's not trying to be something it isn't.
Or just go for what you like.
If you love the Colt Sky Racer, you're like, I want a plastic quartz watch. Again, that's a Swiss quartz movement. In 20 years, you'll still be able to service that thing with Breitling. It's not a wrong answer, it's just a matter of taste.
Yeah.
And obviously, the newer watches can be bigger. Okay, so other questions coming in. What's the difference between JLC Master Control 40 millimeters and the newer 39, and which one's better? I'll take this one.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to say this. I like the old Alpha hands arrangement. The new one has Dauphine hands. The old watch had a brutal 40 millimeter like sports watch case. The lugs were too heavy. The bezel was massive. The case was too deep. It was lacking in elegance. But I loved the Alpha hands. An Alpha hand is a triangular hand that's pinched at the base where it joins the cannon pinion. And to me, that's just more beautiful than a Dauphine, which seems too heavy. If you want my personal opinion of the one to get, and I've never seen one in person, but buy this. Get the white gold black dial Cellini special edition of the 40 millimeters, the best of both worlds, where you have the elegance of white gold and the potency of the black dial, but also you get the Alpha hand, which just looks so much better than the Dauphine. Failing that, get the current black dial 39 millimeter version of the Master Control. And if budget doesn't permit, get the new Sector dial for $5,700 on a strap. A beautiful watch, you can't go wrong, manufacturer movement, highest standards, not an exceptionally hand-finished watch, but it has some hand finishing, and it's still head and shoulders above the like that you'll find sub $6,000.
I'm a sucker for a Sector dial.
Yeah, so am I. Good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think JLC did that one right. Of the 3 Sector dial watches they launched at SIHH, I think that was probably the most elegant. My favorite was the Geographic, just because I like that complication.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Really nice.
Question coming in. Can you swim with a Speedmaster Pro? Josh?
I think the answer is no. Am I wrong?
I would say it depends. I think Josh is definitely thinking along the right lines because it's been in production for so long. Half the Speedy Pros we see are vintage.
So it doesn't have a screw-down crown.
It doesn't have a screw-down crown. 5 ATM water resistance is fine when the watch is new. For instance, Audemars Piguet endorses swimming with 5 ATM. So in their book, you can swim with a Royal Oak chronograph.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Yeah, wouldn't do it though.
I don't agree.
I feel like if the watch does not have a screw-down crown, I don't feel safe swimming with it.
5 ATM is borderline. Straight out of service, water tested, you're okay. Otherwise, let me warn you guys, 5 ATM, tread lightly. Those watches are not designed to be submerged deeply.
No.
Surface activity only. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate all
like high
your
school for
questions
me.
and comments. I love your participation. I want you to forward your additional questions to Tim at Watch You Want and Federico at Watch You Want, where we're going to field them and prep them for our next Q&A show. I want to thank Josh for returning to us.
Thank you, Tim, man. It feels good to be back.
My brother from another mother
That's
right
right.
here. I do want my hat back, though.
All right, no problem. Here.
Faylene,
Cheers.
my producer, keeps me on topic and on time. I want to give a shout out to all of our friends who have subscribed and invite those who have yet to subscribe to join us. Subscribe to this channel. You can get Tim, you can get Josh, you can get Federico, and all the good stuff I do with the Talking Hands watch showcases. Plus, visit us on Instagram and Facebook.
That's
now
right.
under new management, courtesy of our friend Federico.
Doing
where
a
you
great
can
job, by the
interact.
way.
Yeah, absolutely. You can interact with him directly through that interface. Thank you, Faylene. Thank you, Federico. She's Faylene. He's Federico. He's Josh. He's
Hey.
back. I'm Tim. This is Watch You Want. Thanks for logging on.
See you.